All right, it is recording.
So good evening, everyone. Good evening, Jeremy. It's good to hear your voice. And to as chair, to the chairs of the respective committees. Again, like I said, I'm Ruben Diaz Jr. I am the senior vice president at Montefiore, but as I like to joke, I'm a recovering politician. I'm the former Bronx Borough president. There you go. And first, let me just thank you all, because I know that the work that you do as board members is one that you get not a nickel for, and yet you get a ton of headaches at times. And you devote all of your time and your energy. Why? Because you really love your neighborhood, you love your community, and you love the Bronx overall, the same way that I do. And, you know, for all of the years that I was an elected official and as the borough president, I, like many of you, always felt that we always were in first place in everything that was bad, last place in everything that was good. And I did everything that I could in my entire career to try to fix some of those things. And when you look at where we had our challenges among many areas, health and healthcare was one of them. When I was the borough president, we did something called the hashtag Not 62 initiative. There's 62 counties in the state of New York. The Bronx was always number 62 when you looked at health indicators. And the bad news is that we were in last place, 62. But the good news is that every year that we compared ourselves to ourselves, we got a little bit healthier. Now that I'm not in elective office anymore, the challenge is always to try to do something that while you still earn a living, you still have meaning and purpose. And so at Montefiore, while I know nothing about running the healthcare system, they have me here to help create new facilities. You all know that last year there was a huge rezoning that occurred in what we call the East Campus and here in Morris Park. When I was the borough president, we were able to get 4 Metro North stations. We'll talk a little bit about that. The 4 Metro North station was something that compelled the city of New York to look at the entire area and rezone. We, to a degree, were part of that, but we're here today to discuss us potentially getting even or wanting to see if we can agree on getting more FAR so that we can create what we call a high acuity tower or high acuity surgery pavilion. The fact of the matter is that when you look at us here in the Bronx, the average expected life expectancy in the Bronx is 80 years of age. Thank goodness my father's going to be 82. Many of you know the cowboy, the man with the cowboy hat. But when you compare it to Manhattan, it's still 4 years less. In fact, 8 out of the 12 community boards in the community districts in the Bronx have a life expectancy rate lower than the rest of the city of New York. I'll stand over here, Madam Chair, so that you can see some of this. Even though Montefiore is the largest employer in the Bronx, when you look at the healthcare industry, the Bronx is still lagging behind Manhattan and Brooklyn in terms of jobs that are created in the healthcare industry. And we want to change that. So how do we change that? We change that in a number of different ways. Number one of our board members, unbeknownst to her, Ruth Gottesman, and she doesn't like for us to talk about her in this way. She is a widow, and her husband got in early with Warren Buffett. And as you can imagine, he did really well for himself. When he passed away, unbeknownst to her, aside from everything that he left her, and she starts to do her will now because she's in her early 90s, there was about $1 billion with a B that she had no idea that he left her on top of everything else that he left her. But there was a caveat to it. There's a little clause to it. That the $1 billion have to be for charity. So being that she used to go and be and work at Einstein College of Medicine, which by the way, in 2015, now falls under the umbrella of Montefiore. So that's why we Montefiore Einstein. Instead of piecemealing $1 billion, she decided she wanted to donate the entire $1 billion to Albert Einstein College of Medicine so that we can have free tuition in perpetuity, not in terms of scholarship, but for every student. So what that means now is that think about being a student who has a passion for life sciences. Think about if you want to be a doctor. Think about if you want to solve, cancer or something. No matter where you come in the planet, instead of just looking at Cornell or NYU or Columbia or going to the West Coast, now we become a real option for so that we can get the best and brightest minds from all over the planet. However, for me, it's not good enough. Why? Because does that mean that Bronx boys and girls don't get a chance at this? So we are the city of New York. They're doing STEAM centers all over the city of New York. And in Brooklyn, they're in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. The STEAM center, every STEAM center has a theme to it. The one in the Brooklyn Navy Yard is green technology and culinary. The one in Queens is aeronautics. Aeronautics. And the Bronx is healthcare, life sciences. So you have community, or the city of New York has community partners that they have a memorandum of understanding with. So for instance, is LaGuardia Airport in Queens. Makes sense. Brooklyn Navy Yard for the one in Brooklyn. In the Bronx, it is Montefiore Einstein. And so it's a STEAM center for high school students. It's not a high school. It is a center in Brooklyn and in Queens. You have 8 or 10 schools where you identify students with the passion in those areas that they wind up going to the center. This is what we want to do starting the next school year here in the Bronx. Why? We believe we get them at the high school age. And that's how you start to prepare that passion in those minds to potentially receive the scholarships that Ruth Gottesman now has free of charge. So if anybody wants to be a scientist or a doctor or a nurse, or if they want to just go into any other occupation or job under the umbrella of healthcare, not only for Montefiore, but throughout the healthcare system in the Bronx and beyond, now we're creating the farm system. Now we're creating the AAA. We're creating the NCAA to the NBA. We're creating the AAA to Major League Baseball, but in healthcare and life sciences. It's starting to identify students right where they are in the high school level and starting to prepare them, maybe go to Einstein College of Medicine, maybe not, but ultimately getting them to a place where they're the future workforce in healthcare and life sciences, whether it's at Montefiore Einstein or not. But we also now are before you early on to talk about how is it that we create a new facility that will capture this new workforce, the existing workforce and future workforce. And for that, I want to turn it over now to Christine.
So what you see here are 3 different pictures. The one on the left is a modern patient room. They're light, they are bright, they are single patient rooms. You don't have 2 beds in the same room. There's space for comfort and well-being and for family members, and a lot of technology that needs to go into those rooms as well. In the middle, you see a best-in-class operating room. You see the booms hanging from the ceiling. We'll talk about those a couple of times because they do affect the floor-to-floor height. They make hospitals taller than other building typologies. It's just because of the equipment and some of those modern advancements above the ceiling. You see robotic systems, you see advanced ventilation, all of the ergonomic setups for the staff. These are all things within a new modern OR. Then on the left is an emergency department room. We have all heard stories or been in that Montefiore emergency department. It's tight quarters. It's definitely not all private rooms, which is what you see in this image on the left. Making sure that there's space for staff, the future upgrades that are necessary with the PPE, a little hard to see, but I kind of point to it here, that protective environment outside of every patient room so that it meets the needs of the clinicians today and into the future.
If you're like me, your family still goes to Montefiore, but by the way, we're victims of our own success because people don't want to go to other hospitals. But if you're in the emergency room and you have that curtain, you're rubbing right with a family member who's with somebody, right? If you get into a room with the curtains, right. If not, then and we hear it loud and clear, we understand it, and we want to remedy this.
And so looking at the next one, this new advanced care pavilion that Montefiore is considering is really building on their success in cancer care, in cardiovascular care, in pulmonary care. They're number 1 in the top 1% nationwide for their lung and pulmonary program. That's something they want to continue to provide, those really great spaces. and to grow those programs so that everyone in the Bronx has access to these modern facilities and really enhanced care in their backyard and at home, so they don't have to travel into Manhattan to get those really great qualities of care. And particularly for some of these specialties like cardiovascular, neurology, neurosurgery, pulmonology, they require more access to those ORs, more access to that modern technology, those booms in the ceiling, all of those components to really deliver the care. And we understand that with that Morris Park train station, it will create a different opportunity in the Bronx. That Metro North Station will provide access and in a different way, reducing hopefully the number of cars in the neighborhood. And the rezoning in that area will also expand the Hutchinson Metro Center, creating opportunities for that STEAM center.
And we don't trivialize the anxiety that the community has about how much is happening and how fast. We understand that from the Hutch Metro Center. We know that Joe Simone has over 2 million square feet that he can develop as of right. A lot of people think that we're the ones who bought out the supermarket that was in the corner.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
him. That's not us. So let me just, I've been hearing that a lot. Everybody thinks that it's us. That's, he purchased that piece of property. But when you look at the rezoning that occurred last year, you know, there's in the Metro North Station, there's a lot that's happening in this community very fast. We don't trivialize that. We understand it. We're not trying to overlook how the community feels about that.
And so what we're looking at here, you can see the existing campus is this area here on the bottom. And we're looking at the advanced care pavilion sitting on this north edge of the site. It is the largest contiguous open area that is adjacent to the existing hospital. One of the things we have to do in any hospital expansion is we can't take down that whole existing hospital. It has to function. It has to provide the care that people are receiving today. But we do want to make sure that in the expansion, we can pull that ambulance traffic off of the hill, get it around the backside in the area that's also owned by Montefiore on this side edge here, and pull it into the building as fast as possible to get that noise off the street.
So if we get to a place where, we can move ahead with the rezoning here, we would be pulling off what they did with the airports, right? It's like new terminals, but you without disrupting or at least minimal disruption, or not bringing down the existing terminal.
Retrofitting.
You got to keep it going, right? So so when you look at our campus here, this is what we call the Weiler building. This is where, what we call the East Campus in-house in Montefiore. This is Einstein College in Madison. This is where all of the academics happen. Here are our dorms, and this is where all of our research, all of the labs, where all the scientists are. And so this is where we all come in and either visit somebody. This is the emergency room. The emergency rooms are in here somewhere. The rooms where folks are, who are in the hospital here. We want to build while we still keep this operation going. We're not knocking this down. We wouldn't be knocking it down.
We're also trying to create a more walkable campus, really creating this arrival on the front, keeping the green space. We know how important that light and air is to healing and to the patient experience, and making sure that we're not taking all of these buildings and shoving them right up next to each other and displacing some of the windows. All of the inpatient rooms that exist in the Weiler building today also need that access to light. So really trying to make sure that we're providing a space for arrival, pulling again that traffic off of Morris Park Avenue, getting it in, and then creating a connection so that if you've arrived at the new hospital entry over here on the right-hand side, you have a light-filled pathway to get back to those existing beds within the Weiler building over here as well. And so this is just a concept of what the building could look like. But again, that pathway to get cars off the front of Morris Park Avenue to create a real arrival sequence, to make it flat so that it's not up the hill, around the corner, kind of like it is today.
This is a shot, it would be a little high up in the air if you're looking from Seminole. From like Seminole.
I got it. Hi, Brian.
Where's the couple of meetings? Yeah. So this is what, this would be like if you're looking from Seminole across Morris Park towards where Newport and Temple,
Okay.
that way, this is this, so this would be the new entrance. So go back a couple of slides. I'm sorry, Christine, if I keep. Okay, here, so right now, when we go, and visit, see all of the traffic bottlenecks here. How about when you go up the little ramp and there's, that's not sustainable. When the ambulance come, they come into this range. I've been there when the ambulances have to reverse backwards in some occasions because they can't even cut a U-turn because there's other ambulances there. So what we would like to do is we want to create part of the, and Adam will get to this, but we want to mitigate this bottlenecking here. But go back to the slide that we were at. But this would be now the entrance to the hospital, not where it's at. If this were to go on. Okay.
And so jumping into the inside of the building, again, just a concept of what that arrival could feel like from the inside. So this is just an image showing that public entry space for respite for staff and visitors, looking out into that green space. Again, the public entry that would be at the far end of the building here, that pathway to get back into the existing Weiler in the yellow that you see here. And most importantly, creating a large contiguous area for that emergency department. One of the other things that's a little unique with a hospital, you can't just take parts of it and break it up. We need those big footprints to make sure that we have all of the space together for that emergency department so that we can have the ambulance entry, we can have triage, we can have all of the different levels of care within that same area. We can't just put it across the street. That disconnect doesn't really work for the clinicians on the inside. And moving up in the tower, the idea of a very modern, best-in-class inpatient unit. So again, in yellow is our color for that visitor color, showing an example of what that could feel like when you come off the elevators. You have this view out into the garden over here. Again, making sure that it's very light, bright, welcoming in that arrival area. And also the dimensions for a patient bed and a patient unit they're set by a few different things. One is the Facilities Guideline Institute. It's a set of codes that we have to build to. The Department of Health reviews our buildings to make sure they're those proportions and those sizes, to make sure that an ICU room is the right size to care for a modern patient unit. Then it's the space in the middle, that's that support space for the staff. There's dimensions that make those rooms work so that there's enough room for the meds and the cleaning supplies and the soils. And so that's one of the proportions that's really setting our footprint again of these buildings in plan. And then sectionally, so that floor to floor height, we have what you see here are some of the modern booms. If you remember back to some of those areas where Montefiore is doing a really great job, neurosurgery, cardiac, these booms are particularly important for those patients because they need to get to the patient's head in a different way. They need to be able to move those booms around and access the patient in a different way. But what you don't see is the space that's required up above the ceiling. So this is how the boom attaches into this. What you see here is the ceiling. But then there's all of the space up above that. It's really significant structure to hold that boom, make sure it doesn't fall, frankly, and also provide all of the electric and conduit and connections for the equipment. You can kind of see some of it here hanging off the boom. All of those monitors and all of that requires a different amount of space up above the ceiling. So our floor to floor heights in healthcare are 14 to 16 feet in a bed floor. They can be all the way up to 20 feet in an OR platform. Even though you're only getting 10 feet of usable space, you need this other space up above.
And these are,
You can take it if you want.
So we're asking for, or Adam, do you want to go here? You want to go?
Sure.
Yeah, that.
All right. So on the bottom left of the screen is an axon of the building that we're proposing. It's about close to a 2 million gross square foot building. That's about 1.7 million zoning square feet. All of the programmatic considerations that Christina just went through add up to a building envelope like this. This is what Montefiore needs to accommodate the proposed program.
It does include parking, so there are 2 floors of parking in here.
It is big.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let's see, 18.
It's mine. So for instance, even though it technically, it would be 26 stories, but in terms of height, it would be 454 feet. If it was a residential building, that means it's about 45 stories.
Gotcha.
You understand?
Yeah.
But as Christina's telling me, a story for the medical world is different than a story for the residential building. We came to this because Dr. Oswald has charged us, the CEO and president of Montefiore Einstein. He's charged us to give the very best in class. This is not the very best for Montefiore. We're not charged to do the very best for the Bronx. We're not trying, they've gone out and based on all the regulations, all of the specs and that they have to adhere to. They've been charged to go out there and have a facility that can compete with the best of them in New York City, in California, anywhere. And because we got to continue with services, even though we may have the line, if we had all of this property, we could spread it out more, but we don't. And so that's why this is this high now. I'm not here to fight with you, Madam Chair. I'm not here to fight with you. We're not here to fight with anybody. We came to you, if you look at the timeline, and we'll get back to this, go to the timeline from this thing. So we started conversations with the pre-application by September. We try to get every single elected official in front of them before the new year. We were able to do that with the exception of the borough president, and I believe we have AOC's office coming soon. But we've met with all of the elected officials. We briefed them on this. We've gone to other stakeholders. We were at Van Ness. We did Morris Park Association, and so now we're in the. So we're somewhere like I would say right here in the process. Moving forward, it wouldn't even get certified until July of next year. Adam, am I correct?
That's right.
Meaning the actual ULURP process wouldn't even start. The clock would not start for another year and change. We came to you really early so that we can have conversations. We went through a whole first round. This is today is the last meeting. Well, I'm sorry, AOC's meeting because they postponed us a few times, not us. But this would be the last of the first round of conversation so that if you have any questions, concerns, I'm sure there are, advice, suggestions about what it is but I would just say this, and then we'll start with questions. Anything that we do that's not this is taking away from best in class. Only because we don't have the land space to do it on, so it has to be that high.
To be tall.
So go back to the where you showed that. Okay. So for instance, parking we've dedicated 2 stories, 240,000 square feet. If you look at a parking space, it's about 300 square feet. If you divide 240,000 by 300, that's 800 parking slots. That's a pretty good amount of parking slots. If we want it a little lower, 1 floor lower, maybe we can do that. We can do half of that. Is that acceptable? This would also entail having 420 beds. We believe that, and again, these are all single beds. It entails 420 beds. Do we do less beds than that? Whatever it is that we come to, we're not here. This is not This is not, some greedy landlord. We're not doing luxury housing. We're here to try to save lives. We're here to offer the Bronx what the Bronx deserves. We're here to offer privately insured people what they yearn for and look for, but unfortunately go to other boroughs to get it. So the reality is when you look at Montefiore Einstein, we, even though you think of us like, really big, but when you compare us to Columbia, NYU, Northwell, the difference between us and them is that over 80% of the people that we service are publicly insured. So we only get 80-something cents on the dollar in reimbursement. So when you're privately insured, if you have, and we have a lot of those people in the Bronx, including in my family, we want to keep you here. But too long, what happens is, unfortunately, if you get cancer or, where do people go? They go to Sloan Kettering. A lot of people go to Langone. A lot of people go to NYU. Why? Because they feel, for whatever reason, that they get better, care over there or better attention. And we want to not only dispel that because we can get quality healthcare here with us, but in a way to do it is to have a new facility. If you've been seeing our branding, many of our commercials, if you look at the Metro North Station, it would allow for doctors from as far as Connecticut or Manhattan to be able to now come and work in our facilities. Here, unfortunately, the more we sacrifice on that best in class. Adam, anything? We have other actions, right?
Would you like me to go through this slide?
Yep, go ahead.
So, Ruben referenced the rezoning earlier and showed you our application schedule. Just to provide a little more specificity, there are a number of actions we'll need for this project that will be subject to ULURP. To provide some context, the Montefiore Einstein East Campus today is designated as what's known as a large-scale community facility development. That's a designation that was applied a couple decades ago, and it's something that under the zoning resolution allows institutions like Montefiore to benefit from more flexible zoning regulations so that they can plan and develop a campus in a way that suits their mission. The large scale today comprises the block to the south of Morse Park Avenue and the block to the north. And that designation really provides a framework for the other zoning actions that we're seeking.
So, I'm sorry, say that again, and then point that so you can see.
You're talking about
The block to the south and the block to the north.
Right. So what you see here is mostly the block to the south. The Advanced Care Pavilion would be located on that southern block, but right now the cursor is moving around the southern portion of the northern block. So more land use approvals. That includes city planning, authorizations, order standards and appeals, variances and special permits. Going forward, we are looking to expand the boundaries of this large-scale development. Part of that is because the footprint of the Advanced Care Pavilion extends beyond where the boundary is today into adjoining parcels that Montefiore owns. And part of it is because there are other parcels that Montefiore owns that we want to bring into the campus, largely to generate floor area that we need for the project, but also because those parcels do function with the balance of the campus as a whole.
What's currently on those parcels? Right there, yeah.
Do you have a graphic that shows that, Christina?
We don't have the existing plan. There's a few houses that Montefiore owns, and this road is actually kind of underneath the middle, not the middle, the sort of a third of the way into the bed tower here. And if you remember back to this one, that road kind of sits about where this hallway is. And we need the dimension, again, between the existing Ullman building that needs to remain. It's a large research building. And the properties that Montefiore doesn't own. So trying to kind of capture that land that they do own, slide the road up so it's a buffer. That's one of the other issues that Adam will talk about too. But it's really to get this proportion of the bed floor kind of tucked in to that area.
Right. So unfortunately, there's not really a very clear order in which to present the actions because they're all interrelated. But Christina just mentioned these roads, Van Nest and Newport Avenues, which today run a course that cuts through our proposed building footprint. So one of the other actions that we're proposing is an amendment to the city map, demapping, so that those portions of Van Nest and Newport Avenues can be incorporated into the Montefiore campus and more specifically into the footprint of the building. Today, and instead of having those streets, Montefiore would build a drive providing vehicular access to the frontage of this building and back out to Van Nest Avenue. So functionally, the vehicular traffic circulation will be very much like it is today, but the routes will be offshifted a bit to accommodate our proposed footprint. At the left end of this image, where you can see the cursor, that segment there today is actually also a map street, meaning that it appears on the city's official map as something that is a public street. However, it's owned by Montefiore. It's part of a piece of property that's gated on both ends. And so although it's legally a city map, it doesn't function as a city map and the city doesn't own it.
A city street.
I'm sorry, yeah, city street. Thank you, Ruben. So the other mapping action that we're proposing is to demap that street segment to sort of, correct the legal status to match the actual conditions. And that would allow Montefiore to operate it exclusively for ambulance access off of Sackett Avenue and to the front door of the emergency department.
So ambulance comes here, instead of doing all that stuff that we see them, backing up, the ambulance will come here through this road, through that piece here, underneath the sort of like a hanging.
Like an overhang?
like an
Underneath the
overhang.
building, yeah.
They'll be in here. The ambulances will not be in the street, not on Tenbrook. They'll be here. Once they do the drop off, once they're ready to leave, they come back out. So it just flows instead of, coming here, coming there. Because this little piece right here is almost like a two-way, right? It's like a one-way, then a two-way, then it's a one-way.
Yeah, they have to.
Right, it's all confusing because they come up. So we would just have it all one, flow one way around, and this would only be for ambulances. This would not be for the public nor for faculty.
So Christine, would you mind moving forward to that slide again? So the two actions I just described, the expansion of the large scale and the the city map amendments, create the site plan context that we need for this project. There are then two actions that we need to allow us to create the building envelope that we've shown you in this presentation. The more significant piece of that is the proposed rezoning from the existing R4 district to an R6 district. The northern block of the campus today is already located mostly in an R6 district. There are other areas, particularly to the east, that are zoned for higher density, especially following the recent rezoning. The southern block is still in an R4 district, and to generate the density that we need for this building, we're proposing to change that to an R6. R4 has a maximum FAR of 2 for community facility uses. R6 is 4.8. And then you'll see a category in the bottom left for bulk relief. That's a catch-all for certain city planning approvals that we would need to allow the building envelope. The building envelope, as we're proposing it in an R6 district, does not comply with height and setback regulations because it's closer to the street than it would need to be to create a compliant condition. So with the large scale designation, with that rezoning, we would also seek a special permit from the City Planning Commission and a text amendment related to that special permit to give us those height and setback waivers that the building requires.
Question.
I did hide the chat and there were questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
so
we're
we're gonna go,
Yeah.
first we're gonna do the committee first and then we'll move on to online.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It's,
So I want to say thank you for the presentation. This was very, very helpful. Because I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. But this was very helpful. I have to say I am 100% a fan of Einstein. My kids were born in
Really?
Einstein. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So when I had tonsillectomy in third grade, I went to Einstein. And I was kind of shocked when Montefiore came in because I was like, oh Lord, it's going to change. And there was a couple of rough patches, but I mean, it all worked out and it's working out now. So a couple of questions that I have is, you mentioned Reuben High School STEM.
Mm.
Why not start it in middle school?
That's, we just a partner. That's,
No, understood.
the city of New York, maybe they, maybe they'll expand it.
Mhm.
So that's a good question, right? But that's they don't call it the DOE anymore, they call it can pay for right now, and maybe hopefully they'll expand it.
Yeah, because to me,
And all we do is, so I'm sorry,
No.
the MOU that we enter is that we'll have our scientists, our doctors, partner up with the STEAM Center,
Mhm.
where they can either come and talk to the students. The students will be able to come to our labs. They would be paid internships. They could do, or unpaid internships where they have, weeks in the summer or what have you, or after school, and be right in the campus, somewhere in the campus, whether it's on the medical side with us or on the academic or the science or the science labs with Einstein.
well, I do think, Madam Chair, that the Education Committee should 100% advocate for this to be brought to middle schoolers. I think middle schoolers need to be exposed. We tend to sleep on middle school, and there's a lot of things that go on in middle school. This is where the kids need to be exposed to career paths such as medicine, because it's not just becoming a doctor, it's not just becoming a nurse. There's administrative aspects to it, parts to it. The other question I had is, what about the funding, especially under this administration? I know the $1 billion, but that's not going to fund it
No,
all.
that's only so the $1 billion goes into an endowment.
Right,
The interest of the endowment pays for the student's tuition.
right.
Um,
So how are you guys handling this
well, that's above my pay.
chaotic
That's my,
situation?
so remember, if you go to the timeline, we don't, if everything goes well,
Hopefully he'll be out of office, but yeah, you never know, so.
I don't want to get too political here, but if everything went well, right,
Mhm.
we would get the approval sometime in the spring of 27. And then you got to go into the process of, mixed again, it's not in my purview.
Right.
Our CFO, our CEO, we have assets. What do we do with some assets in other places? Do we get federal funding? Obviously, we would go to federal funding, we go to state funding, so on and so forth, to build the facility that we ultimately all can agree.
Yeah, I asked because an article came out in City Limits today where for CUNY, the part of the STEM program was cut out,
Mhm.
withdrawn from the school. So, just thinking ahead, what is the plan B, C, D, E, F, G? Because so far this sounds like a good project. So my third question is renovation. And what question did I have about the renovation?
Would we renovate the existing facilities?
The add-ons. I think it had to do with the add-ons and the residency, the living quarters. Would there be some living quarters for residencies?
Do you have?
Are you gonna
across
add
the
it,
street?
add some, or?
No, the living quarters that we have now, it's a good question. We're not there yet. The living quarters, the only ones that we have now is that some of the homes
Okay,
around the area, the same way in what we call the West Campus,
Mm.
over by the Moses Campus, is what we call the West East. So this one is a Weiler, that one is Moses, East, West. So if you look at Bainbridge, we have we have houses. And that's
right,
what we do.
right.
We have the two dorms for the students, and some of the faculty, end up sleeping in the dorm, and the towers. Renovations, yes, but that's above my pay grade right now. I'm here to try to help with more FAR.
Okay.
But we certainly want to do it all. I mean, we want to not only do this building, we want to do something eventually with our cancer, consolidate our cancer facilities. They're in three pieces right now. You know, the green glass buildings on Blondell. It's not fair to have someone, you know, who has cancer go from here to, you know, over there, across the street, you know, and so on and so forth. We want to put it all under one roof eventually. And of course, we need to renovate the existing facilities that we have now.
Right, and that's why the FAR is important because, and that's why I asked about residency, right? Because if you can, first of all, I don't have an issue with how high the building is. I think for medical purposes, you need it all, right? And so, but residents closer to where they work is extremely important because to get over all the way to Bainbridge, I don't like going up there. So I know the average person who's working until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning is not going into that travel. So that's just a food for thought. I know that you had a list of like the cancer research and labs, and I also wanted to see maternity.
I was gonna say. the same.
Madam Chair, know I had a situation, maternity, delivering my daughter who was 21 weeks old, and she lived for an hour, but they couldn't save her because they were not equipped. I need that to change.
So every single one of your elected officials have brought it up. They brought it up to us. We've heard it in other meetings. We currently so we are in the Hutch Metro Center, but we lease from, you know, those are long-term leases, and we have a floor there now. That we were able to cut the ribbon and inaugurate last year. So when you look at our podium, just go back to the podium. Certainly, based on everything that we've been hearing, on everything that we've been hearing, that would, you know, we got it. I'm going to go back to Dr. O and say this is something that the president has told Dr. Oswald that, you know, your
People want.
Your
Yeah.
state senator Natalia Fernandez has stated that strongly. So it's there. It's like ragu, it's in there.
I do wanna jump in and piggyback off of what Wendy just said. I am a midwife. I've been so for 20 years. I've worked in the HAC system for those 20 years. And I love the work that we do. One of the places that I worked was NCB. And at NCB, we would often get transfers from Monty because they didn't have, you know, and I think that is terribly unfortunate. And so, you know, whoever you can speak to,
Right.
midwives,
Yeah.
midwives. You know, we have excellent outcomes. I fully stand behind the work we do. And I don't think that Montefiore takes advantage enough of midwifery care, just sharing that. So, but I do agree with Wendy. I think
Yeah.
maternity would be great.
Duly noted, and
Yeah.
again, it's been stated time and time again. It's part of that package.
Okay.
Okay.
The other one was community initiative. I just want to make sure that this new campus that we're building or that you're building provides resources to the community. You know, from single mothers to families, any type of community initiative that they have that in-house. And need more parking. I do think you're gonna need more parking because what is the staff? If you have 800 spots and your staff is about that, right? You're gonna need visitor parking. So you may need 2 more levels. Again, the height of the building is not a concern to me because the more the merrier. But to be comfortable, because right now parking in that area and then parking across the street, it's not.
I was actually gonna ask about that because there's currently that weird little parking lot. That's
Right.
like on the gravel road.
Oh,
It's like this narrow little strip
Oh, that's the one over here, I think.
that there's usually like a taco truck or something,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so
It's over here.
would that parking lot disappear as part of this?
No.
no.
Okay.
And that's that parking lot, that's a company that runs that,
Right.
you know. But we do have currently, this is the big, if you look on East Chester Road, This building is actually owned by,
Jacoby.
Jacoby.
Right.
And so we have a 99-year lease, and it fell inside of the large scale rezoning. Some people say, oh, somebody did last meeting said, are you guys gonna do something like just homes here? No. The only thing that we can do with this is either more parking here, or if we were to do residential, part of the wording on the lease stipulates that it could only be for either the students or faculty.
Mm.
We can't even do, any general public, let alone any programs or services that perhaps the community doesn't want. If we're gonna do that, but it's not the point, that's not even, our priority right now. But this is a parking lot. So in addition to what we would do here, it would still be, and we're always, we still have 80-something left on this lease.
Well, that actually is good, because since it's specifically designated, right?
Right,
Because the other question becomes, once Metro North comes, will you then allow parking out from outside?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's the
fine,
issue.
and that's,
I mean, Botanical Gardens do it, they do it, right? But it's a privately owned company, but again, you would need more parking spaces. Again, I don't have any issues with the height of the building. I just think you're gonna need to add additional parking, maybe 2 more levels, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Did you have questions?
Good.
Because I have some.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was curious as to what the anticipated square footage of the individual rooms,
Will be.
approximately,
I would say between 260 and 300.
Like a parking spot.
Yeah.
Okay, and then,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, there's no way around that, right?
No, I mean,
When you look at the regulations, right?
Right.
That's.
there's a dimension, right? The bed's about 8 feet,
Yeah.
maybe a couple inches less, but generally we're looking at a high acuity tower, so all ICU. So you have to have 5 feet at the foot and a foot at the head and 5 feet on one side and 4 feet on the other. And then you've got to have space for the family and you got to have space for the clinician. So it's not getting any smaller.
right,
than
okay.
that.
I mentioned the parking as well. I was curious and you mentioned, the lease with Jacoby. I was wondering if there are any plans moving forward in terms of kind of enhancing a public-private partnership, between Monty and Jacoby, just, since they have X amount of space and, if that's something
No.
in the works at some point.
For this specific site.
Just in general, kind of,
I think some of the nurses, on the nursing program, there's like an exchange. But other than that, no, not that I'm aware of. I could find out, but not that I'm aware of.
okay,
It would be good,
yeah,
because they have a lot of space that they're not using.
right,
Some of it we have. If you look at right behind this building, you see, this is an old Jacoby. So we have this as a lease, their garage as a lease.
Okay.
So we use it for our labs. I'm sorry. I think it becomes tricky because it's 2 different systems.
right,
And one is run by the city. So, it's like having 2 recording artists.
yeah,
with
Same
different,
booth.
with different rap labels, with
Right,
different
right.
labels, and you want them to make a song together.
Right.
Yeah.
I got it.
That's the only.
That was pretty good.
That's the best way for me to do it. You know what I mean? You want them to sing together, you want them to put the labels down, like, that's the right sort,
Uh, which were the anticipated specialties again?
Oh, I mean, these are some that they're thinking about today, and like Ruben mentioned, the timeline for this. Vascular, neurology and neurosurgery, pulmonology, and orthopedics.
Okay.
And those are all, those all of
Yeah.
these. And cancer is becoming more and more of a treatable chronic condition as more and more advancements are occurring. So those really are some of the things that we see as, having a really great impact in the community
Yeah.
because of the need.
I don't know if, again, I'm not a doctor or physician here, but I don't know if also organ transplant falls under that, but that's something that I know that Dr. O talks
Like to
about.
see-
It
It's
does.
on there for the lung transplant specifically. It is
Whoever
one
is
of,
doing the organ transplants.
Yeah.
And in terms of future growth, because we know that we have the Metro North coming and we will be seeing more housing and anticipated population increase. In terms of your projections for this particular project, what is your expectation in terms of being able to fulfill the future need based on, with this particular project?
Sure. So part of the reason we're completely moving that emergency department is to hit the new volume targets. So the strategy department from Montefiore is looking out long term to understand what those anticipated volumes might be, and to designate a much larger footprint for the emergency department. On the inpatient side, again, they're not looking to take down anything in Weiler. Now, double beds might become single beds, some other things like that, but this is predominantly a net new investment in the community where, the 420 beds,
That's why so many
it's
beds.
new.
We-
The ORs, when you look at that, there's kind of 3 floors of cath labs, EP labs, ORs, that really high tech infrastructure in the diagnostic and treatment platform, radiology investment. All of those are what we anticipate being in that podium. It is also driving the floor to floor heights.
Yeah.
An MRI doesn't like to be in a 10-foot tall
Yeah.
ceiling, right? So all of those pieces are net new. Whether renovations over time would take place, again, but
We're
my
just trying to
favorite.
get past it.
But-
But,
Right.
take us back to the, where you see,
Which-
rendering where you see the entire footprint.
We'll go the wrong way.
Okay, right here. So remember that, we're not gonna we wanna add on to the emergency room. So this is all gonna connect. The only thing is that you'll be coming in from this side. So we know we anticipating the growth. That's why we're saying 400. That's why I want to tell people we want to give you best in class. If for whatever reason folks think that it's too high, then we go, 300 beds, 250
Right.
beds. But then now,
And we're
now you're
sacrificing.
sacrificing.
Right.
And again, we're not here to fight with anybody. We that's why we're here early. We're here to have a conversation.
Yeah.
We're here to take notes. We're here to go back. We're here to tweak it, come back a second round, even before we go into the official ULURP round, you guys, right? And say, we heard you, this is what we did, this is what we took away, this, we're gonna come back around.
Right.
But understand that we already anticipating that, and it's not only in terms of space, but when you look at the infrastructure. So by the time this gets built, technology today will be obsolete. So
Right.
so how do you do it for the technology that's needed by the time it's there? Plus, how is it that you have an infrastructure to be able to have the technology 10 years down the line after that? To be able to adapt to the growing population, right? Because even the buildings that are zoned for now, they're not all gonna go up immediately. That'll be in drips and drabs as well.
So one other example I would give, teledata closets. It used to be literally like a closet, like
Right.
behind the that size was what you could put all of the IT, AV, all that stuff. The engineers want a 12 by 26 foot room every 250 feet so that there's not loss of
Right.
signal. That's a huge room.
Yeah.
Right? Every 250 feet throughout the whole hospital.
Facility, yeah.
So that's taking some of that floor space that can't be used for patient care. And you still need all the space for patient care. And then the floor to floor height, again, all that stuff that's going up above the ceiling so that the ductwork, one example I'll give there is the energy efficiency and the new codes, some of the even local law 97, some of the really specific New York ones require the airflow to be slower. it's easier for energy efficiency. When it's slower, it's just physics. So then the ductwork gets twice as big if the air's half the speed.
Right.
So again, that's taking that space above the ceiling and driving our floor to floor heights. If you start to whittle away at those floor to floor heights, the ducts get skinnier, the proportions get weirder, gets harder for the airflow. All of those things, again, are some of those compromise points for consideration.
Interesting.
And some of it's just physics. Like we can't,
That makes sense.
Yeah, you can't negotiate that.
Like,
Yeah. That's why we appreciate, you all and giving us the opportunity now so that we could understand and educate everybody that there's just some things that we can't negotiate. If we could, believe me, we would, but, we're blinded by the faces of it though.
Yeah, I mean, as a healthcare worker and as a consumer of healthcare services, I'm with Wendy, like, for me, improved healthcare is a good thing. I will say that I know one of the major concerns, which I'm sure you've heard already, people are afraid of seeing, this neighborhood change, evolve, into the Moses campus, where, a lot of the smaller houses have become maybe administrative offices or housing for students or whatever it is that they are. And I think that that's a very real fear for a lot of people. And it's something just to, have in mind. Personally, I'm down, like
When I took this charge, I said to Dr. Osborne and to the team, like being the former borough president, I understand all of it, right? So that we're gonna go to them early.
Good.
This is why we're doing that. We're gonna go to them early so that we can talk about this. Again, we are not proposing a high-rise luxury apartment. We're not proposing, something that where it's a casino making billions of dollars, right? We're like a luxury hotel. We're not proposing a high-rise jail like in another neighborhood in the Bronx, right? What we want to do is give the Bronx what it needs in terms of A, saving lives, B, creating jobs, and see something where we become a model to everybody else. We don't want to just want to do well. We want to be the envy. And it takes, something so monumental as this.
I think one
put
thing.
the Bronx on the map.
Yeah, I think one thing with the, and I've been on this community board for almost 2 years, and folks will hear you, like I hear you. But when they hit that door, it's like, Ruben said we're getting a high rise. So I think you're gonna have to continuously drill that in folks' head, right? Because the other thing is, what was I gonna say? Is that you do need, the campus does need to be expanded, right? And you need to house certain things to make it work, to make it, that's why the FAR is so important, because just what Cynthia said, and I'm going all over the place, you want to make sure that what you're asking for, the next developer can't come in and do. That's the key, right?
Yeah.
So if it's
That it becomes
if you're-
contextual. Now,
yeah, if
now.
you're asking
That's a
for an
wonderful-
increase in zoning or change in zoning,
Or somebody else
just
come
make
in.
sure that the next developer
Yeah.
can't come in
Do it
and
to
say,
150.
oh, we want to do it Montefiore did. And boom, that's when you're gonna have the issue with the community, because they're gonna say they lied to me.
Yeah.
So that's the
That's-
big part of negotiation. When you negotiate that zoning, make sure that it's written that no other developer can follow you and ask for that increase in fee.
You talk about it. It's helped you out there.
That would do it.
And one thing that's come up recently, I had a conversation with some people locally, not related to this project, just in general about, healthcare facilities in the area. And they were lamenting the fact that, Jacoby once upon a time had a pool that was accessible to the community. They have the track. That's one of the things that they take pride in. You can go on your lunchtime and walk around the 3 miles of the track. And these are things that are for the community, and the community feels like you're giving back. And I think that that's something to keep in mind, is where, the community that maybe isn't going for a calf on a particular week, but that they can, access something, a gym or
So like a
something,
food garden,
you know,
right?
yeah.
If you have a garden and you're growing vegetables, you may want to have a farmer's market to come out where you're inviting the community onto your campus. So it's just like, you're not inviting them to come when they're sick.
Right.
You're saying, we're
part of the
we're the
community.
bed of resource. Come to us.
We've been bouncing ideas. That's why we have when we say restorative garden. My youngest son graduated from Temple University. I don't know if you've ever been to Philly.
Yep.
So it's like an urban campus, cars drive
Yeah.
in the middle, but yeah, it's like so we would like to have it, that way where it's safe for the pedestrian, make it more pedestrian friendly without, stopping vehicles from going up, Morris Park, obviously. But so that people can feel like there's something else to do there
Right.
and just come and either be sick or visit a sick.
Right.
Another point, just back to what you said in terms of what people may say out there, that's why we come in early, because I already felt the heat of the telephone game. What do I mean by that? How do we start this meeting? When I said we didn't buy the supermarket.
Right.
Oh, mind if you already took the supermarket away from us.
Yeah.
That wasn't us, right? And so we're not here to do just homes. We're not here to do homeless facility. We wanted to come early so that everyone already has the information, and then we'll keep coming back around. But we know how the telephone game works, right? They want to do this or they want to do that. So
Want to do the audience?
Yeah.
Want to do the 2-minute drill?
Yeah, you go ahead. You good with that.
I know Herbert asked about the number of jobs that are anticipated.
we don't. Herbert, I don't know. Can we hear him?
No, here he is.
How many?
How many new
jobs?
jobs will be?
Are we
created?
just gonna read the
Yeah,
question, or we're gonna have them ask it verbally?
No, we're just gonna read it.
So we anticipate thousands of jobs. I can't be specific because we don't know what the community is gonna allow us to do,
Right.
right? So it all depends. It all depends in terms of the services. What type of services? Again, we want to work first with the FAR, but we don't know. I mean, obviously, there's going to be construction jobs. We're going to provide, several thousand jobs once it's all said and done, but we don't know to what magnitude because we don't know what you're going to give us.
Makes sense.
Maybe 10 down, 15, 20.5.
No, not that many.
Good evening, everyone online. Do you have any questions? Please unmute yourself. No questions? Okay, well, we're gonna move on to that.
Oh,
No.
I'll
Thank
ask the question.
Okay, Diana, go ahead.
About the school that's been promised. I'm a little unclear as to whether that's part of this new project or whether it was part of the Bronx Metro North, and who is going to pay for it?
Okay.
Like, do you just pay for the construction of the school and then the city takes over from there? How does that all work?
Yeah, great question. So it's independent, but it all works together. So let me explain. The city under de Blasio, under the former administration, started this concept of STEAM Center. So it used to be called STEM, but they added the A for arts. So it's a center, not a school. So think of it as an incubator where you feed in students from different schools. It may go up from 10 to anywhere between 8 and 12 schools per borough will sign up for the center. Currently, right now, Ms. Diana, you have Joe Simone in the Hutch Metro Center. They are crossing their T's, dotting their I's, and sharpening their pencils with the School Construction Authority, where they will be leasing space from him on that side of the track. So the idea is this: that's independent of what we have, but the way you tie it all in together is that Montefiore Einstein is the community sponsor or partner to this center, because the theme of it is healthcare life sciences. So we have a partnership with them in that we wanted to have them in close proximity to our East Campus. B, the reason why we want, and the Department of, not the department, they call it the New York City Public Schools now. They want for professionals in our facilities to give lectures, to teach courses, to give inspirational speeches, to interact with the students. And they want the students to be in close proximity with our facilities. So we can bring them over so that they can go to the labs, so they can, have that experience. So they can be in some, medical setting. They're part of their facility, I think they're doing something like 40,000 square feet with the Hutch Metro Center. Part of their facility would be like a replica of an emergency room, a replica of some medical setting, right? Because you also just don't want students anywhere in an actual medical facility. But the reason it all gels together is, again, this is starting the farm system. This is allowing for kids, teaching them to their passion, so that ultimately from high school, they go to college, whether they go to Einstein or not, and pursue a career in medicine. Through it all, though, while they're doing this, part of the partnership would be placing these students in some of our facilities, or it could be in Jacoby, it could be in other places. During the summertime, they could have paid internships. Maybe they're just doing, some studies, maybe they're part of some research team, whether they get paid or not. But again, the way that it all gels together is that they become part of our farm system now. Montefiore doesn't pay for it. The city, the school, the public schools pays for the facilities and everything that goes in it. One of the things we may be paying for is probably some of the paid internships. That would be part of our partnership. And so we have a whole development division. Our senior vice president of development, Kathy Kearns, that's what she raises money for. So we can do some of that.
Thank you for that really interesting explanation. Thanks.
Did it answer your question?
Yes, it did.
And that's hard.
Yeah.
Who's next?
I think that's it.
Michael, did you?
Oh, yeah.
I fully support this project. Thank you.
Wow, yeah, guess from Michael.
I just want to throw something else in there. Adolescent mental health. I don't know what the current resources are for Monty. But I have an 18-year-old child who's on the autism spectrum, who is currently, as we speak, in an adult psychiatric inpatient unit. Adult 40, 50-year-old men. I was told it's because there is no inpatient adolescent psych. I don't know if that's true. I don't know who I need to speak to advocate for that. But to me, it is unconscionable that my child right now is there and she is further traumatized. And again, as a parent, as a clinician, as a consumer, I think we need to do better. That's like my little editorial soapbox for the day. So take it to whoever you need to take it to, or, if you want to give me some names offline,
It affects all of us. My brother is a granddad. His grandson is going to be 4, and he's autistic, and it affects all of us.
Yeah, it does.
Takes a village,
It really affects this community. I have a 15-year-old who is on the spectrum, and the amount of work that I had to do just to find services for him, not within my community, outside in Westchester, is ridiculous, right? So So if we know better, we have to do better.
Right.
And that's why I love what I'm hearing thus far. I know it's gonna change. That's how development happens. But I'm on the programmatic side, right? I don't care about how high the building is, how wide the building is. I have a construction background. I don't care. I care about the program. I care about the substance. And mental health and teenagers, especially this generation and younger, they need it. They're not built like us, right? And so they need all of the support they possibly can get. And they're not getting it here in this borough, which is sad to say.
And thank you for that. This is exactly what we're trying to solve, right? We're trying to solve a couple of things here. We believe that we do a pretty good job, but we also are not blind to the fact that we fall short in so many different areas. Some of it is because our current, facilities are antiquated. But some of it is because, we become, like I said earlier, victims of our own success. And people come to us more than they can do others. Some of it has to do with, retraining folks, because populations change. So we want to offer the Bronx exactly what the Bronx deserves. Number two, we don't want people to leave. And we don't want their, whether it's mental health issues, whether it's cancer, whatever it is, we don't want to submit or subscribe to the notion that if you want that, you got to go someplace else. And that happens all the time. It happens in my family, it happens in your family, and Montefiore Einstein wants to, change that. And that's what this is really all about. We don't want you to go to White Plains or Westchester, unless if you go to one of the Monty. But in all seriousness, when you have if you happen a heart attack or something like that, every minute counts. So why travel such a distance? Because psychologically we've been programmed that you're going to get better over there, but never mind that the travel time can exacerbate your situation and make things even worse. It should all be here. We don't want anybody to leave. So that's what we're trying to solve. A, what we deserve, and B, how do we keep people here instead of going other places? And we believe this is the answer. Stay local, baby.
What do you need from us?
Right now, nothing.
Okay.
So we just wanted
You need a vote or
audience.
anything?
No, we just wanted your audience today. We wanted you to digest some of this. It's a lot, but
It's actually funny you say that. I think it's an easy sell for us.
Yeah.
I mean, we're like, okay.
Times. We complain about lack of services.
Yeah, seriously.
We complain about the facilities being, I don't want to say subpar because some of them are great, but we can't, for me personally, I can't complain that I waited X number of hours in the waiting room and that we were 3 stretchers deep in the, in the ER waiting to be seen, and then say no to a better facility.
Yeah.
That just doesn't
Then
gel for me.
let me take my nothing back.
You should. You are.
What we want from you then, since you feel that way, we appreciate it, is obviously we're going to keep the line of communications open. But conceptually, when people just want to soundbite, when people just want to throw darts, when people want to say, well, Monty this, or it's out of context, it's not contextual, with the community and everything. If you can just say what you're saying, and help us educate folks that, again, what we want to do here is beneficial to us. It's not like, it's not something else. It's not, we've all been angry at somebody coming in here and building something else. Montefiore has been in the Bronx for 100 years. I wouldn't be attaching myself, and what I believe about my borough, and the fact that I like to say that if the Bronx was an individual, you're looking at him, right? So I wouldn't be attaching myself to this if it wasn't that we're going to do something great, that we could be the paradigm in life sciences and healthcare. We could be what Silicon Valley, once we get all this together, or Silicon Valley is a tech, we could be that for healthcare. We could be like a wellness village here. But it's gonna take some sacrifice. And if you ask me, it's not minor, but the sacrifice here is really the height. It's really the height to a lot of people. You know, they want to make, some folks want to make it about something else. You know, people want to drag us into the just homes and Jacoby. That's not us. Some people want to drag us into, you know, how the city treated the community in another zoning last year. You know, that's not us. You know, some people may want to drag us into, you know, some developer coming here and mistreating the community and fighting the community, and either you take it or leave it. We're not fighting with anybody. That's not our approach. We want to have a conversation.
I think I would even go a step further, and this is something that I kept saying for this particular community board, because you're right, Ruben, when you say, you know, folks about with the Just Home
Yeah.
and the Metro North, and, you know, communities have been lied to, right? A presenter would come in, say one thing, leave, walk out the door, and then changes are made, and you don't hear anything. Fine, fair, right?
Yeah.
I think what should happen is, and we could do this in collaboration. We need to do a vision series.
Okay.
Where you're actually bringing the community out and you're asking them for their opinion.
Okay.
You know,
I think that'll go far.
we did that in
Not a bad
Harlem.
idea, 'cause
We
we're all
did that,
together.
we did that in Harlem when there was a huge development happening on the east side, on East 111. And we did a 3-part vision series. And we had the community come out, we set up round tables, we had food, and every session was a topic. And I think that's how you're gonna get it, because to be honest, you see the individuals on here, these are the same individuals that come to the community.
Yeah.
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 You're gonna get the telephone game, right?
Yeah, no
And that's no disrespect to anybody online, that's just being real. So I think for us to engage the community more
Yeah.
and to force folks to come out, especially now that we're approaching warmer weather, is we need to do a vision series.
Then that would be my other ask, is to help us in that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely. That's an easy one.
We'll start picking dates and
Yeah,
locations.
yeah, that's our job, to be
And
honest.
outreach, like, we have the wherewithal to do like flyers and whatever it is.
Absolutely.
But you let us know who to pinpoint where, and I'll bring in our senior vice president of community relations also, Marcos Crespo, who's a former elected official, and we can start doing a lot of that. And that would be great, because right now we're in March, we're, you know, early spring. This could put us somewhere early summer.
Right.
Or even late summer, you know, we'll decide. But then that gives us, you know, a couple of hits before we go back to that timeline of the action. You know, a lot of times people only come to you right when the ULURP is over.
Right.
It's not at the community.
Right.
board.
Yeah, that's why I thought you were gonna do that right now. Oh, you did it.
No, we came way early.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's happening now in Manhattan with Lenox Hill Hospital.
I was just gonna mention that, yeah, Northwell is.
The community board is being asked to vote on something right now during the process.
Yes.
You know, and this is like their first interaction.
Yep.
Well, thank you,
Thank you.
guys. This
Thank
has
you.
been-
Thank you.
And you guys came in heavy and hard.
So we're going
Thank you for the presentation.
wrap up.
Yeah.
There are no motions, there's no old business, and there's no new business. So the meeting has ended at
7:36.
7:36. Everyone have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Well, thank you. So if